P47/P52, The Return Signal. P47/P52, The Return Signal. Episode 1, The Signal. What you're about to hear is a work of fiction, a story woven from real history, real reports, and ancient words, but a story all the same. Settle in, close your eyes if you like, and listen. Cold open, every generation has looked up into the night sky and wondered the same quiet question. Are we alone? For most of human history, the sky answered with silence. The stars turned slowly overhead, the seasons came and went, and the question simply waited. But sometimes, on certain nights, in certain places, the sky seemed to answer with something else, a light where no light should be. Picture a field in northern Alabama, an hour before sunrise, fog resting on the grass, soft as breath, the tree line dark against a sky just beginning to think about morning. Nothing moves. And then, above the trees, 3 small lights, not flashing, not darting, not falling, just hovering, patient, silent, as if they had been there a long time and were in no hurry at all. The farmer who reported them said something strange afterward. He said he wasn't afraid. He said it felt like being watched by something that already knew him. By the time the sun rose, the lights were gone. This is where our story begins. It is called The Signal. Chapter 1, The Lights. Chapter 1, The Lights. What exactly have people been seeing? For almost a century now, pilots, soldiers, radar operators, police officers, farmers, and ordinary people standing in their backyards have described lights in the sky that seem to follow no rules at all. Some reports describe impossible acceleration, an object drifting lazily one moment and gone the next, crossing the horizon in the space of a heartbeat. Others describe silence. That is the detail witnesses return to, again and again, not the speed, not the shape, the silence, something that large, moving that fast, should roar, and instead there is nothing, only the sound of your own breathing and the night going on around you. In 1997, thousands of people across Phoenix, Arizona, watched a formation of lights drift slowly over the city, vast, unhurried, and utterly quiet. To this day, people who stood beneath them describe the same feeling, not terror, awe. In 2004, off the coast of Southern California, Navy pilots were sent to investigate something their ships had been tracking for 2 weeks. What they found, hovering above a disturbance in the ocean, was a smooth white object, shaped like a tic-tac, with no wings, no rotors, no exhaust. When it moved like thought. One of the pilots later said simply, "It was not from this world as I understood it." Years later, cockpit recordings would surface. Gimbal, go fast. Objects rotating against the wind. Objects skimming the sea with nothing holding them up. Many sightings, of course, are eventually explained. Weather balloons, aircraft, satellites catching the sun, the mind doing its honest best with strange light. But some, a small, stubborn residue of cases, remain unresolved, investigated, documented, measured on radar and infrared, and never explained. And within that residue, a pattern. The unexplained lights do not appear randomly, they cluster. Around nuclear weapons facilities, around military installations, around restricted airspace, the places where humanity keeps its most dangerous possessions. In the 1960s, at a missile base in Montana, security teams reported a glowing object hovering above the launch facility. And in the minutes that followed, one by one, the missiles beneath the ground went dark, offline, as if something had reached down and gently switched them off. Whoever or whatever was behind the lights, they were not sightseeing, they were paying attention, and they were paying attention to very specific things. Chapter 2, The Pattern. Chapter 2, The Pattern. Now, let the lights fade for a moment and look at a map of the world. Because this story is not only about the sky, it is about the ground beneath it and the strange way certain places keep pulling history toward themselves. Put a pin in Nevada, where the unexplained is studied behind fences that officially do not exist. A pin in the Western Pacific, where pilots chase the impossible. Pins across Russia, Japan, the North Sea, everywhere the lights have lingered. And then drift east to a narrow ribbon of water between two ancient shores. The Strait of Hormuz, a passage barely 21 miles wide, through which a fifth of the world's oil flows every single day, a place where tankers move slowly through golden morning light, watched by warships, watched by satellites, watched always by someone. By itself, it is only geography. But keep going, follow the pins. Israel, Iran, the mountains and deserts where empires have risen and dissolved for 5,000 years. And then lift your eyes upward again, because the pattern climbs. The moon, where, after 50 quiet years, the great powers are suddenly racing to return, not for flags this time, for water, for positioning, for permanence. Mars, where machines already crawl across red sand, and human beings speak seriously about cities. Artificial intelligence, growing faster than anyone predicted, in laboratories on 3 continents. Minds of glass and light, learning to reason. Quantum computers, humming in golden frames at the bottom of refrigerators colder than deep space. Oil, orbit, intelligence, ancient land, by themselves, these are just headlines, just the ordinary noise of a civilization becoming more powerful. But place them side by side, and a strange question begins to whisper at the edge of things. Why do these subjects keep appearing together? Why do the unexplained lights gather around nuclear weapons, while the world's attention gathers around a 21-mile strait, while the great powers reach for the moon and Mars, while machines learn to think? Coincidence, says the reasonable mind. And the reasonable mind is usually right, usually. But there is another possibility, a quieter one, that these are not separate stories at all, that they are pieces of something larger, something with a shape we cannot quite see yet. The way a person standing too close to a mural sees only brush strokes. Hold that thought, gently, the way you'd hold something fragile. Because the next piece of the pattern is not modern at all. It is very, very old. Chapter 3, Jerusalem. Chapter 3, Jerusalem. There is a city where every stone has been argued over for 3,000 years. Not the largest city in the world, not the wealthiest. It commands no ocean, no oil field, no great river. And yet, empire after empire, century after century, history keeps returning to it. Babylon came, Rome came, crusaders and caliphs, and generals and pilgrims, all drawn to the same few hills, the same worn limestone streets, as if the place itself exerted a kind of gravity. Jerusalem, walk with me there for a moment. In the hour just after dawn, the light comes in low and golden, sliding along alleys polished smooth by 30 centuries of footsteps. Shopkeepers unlock their doors, bread is baking somewhere, bells, and then the call to prayer, and then, beneath both, the old silence of the stones themselves. East of the city walls rises a hillside covered in olive trees. Some of those trees are more than 1,000 years old, their trunks twisted like rope, still bearing fruit. The hill is called the Mount of Olives, and for as long as records exist, people have believed that history will one day end where it began, here. The prophet Ezekiel wrote of a great gathering of nations in the last days, storm clouds of armies drawn toward this land, as if against their own will. The book of Matthew records a teacher sitting on that same olive-covered hillside, telling his students what the end of the age would feel like. Wars and rumors of wars, nation rising against nation, and signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. Signs in the stars. The book of Revelation speaks of the sky being opened, of things descending, of a war not between countries, but between futures. Now, you may believe these are divine words. You may believe they are ancient poetry. This story does not ask you to decide tonight. It only asks you to notice something. That for thousands of years, across languages and empires and faiths, human beings have looked at this one small hill and felt that the sky had plans for it, and that today, in an age of satellites and quantum computers, the region around that hill remains the most watched, most contested, most nervously guarded place on Earth. The pins on our map, the oil, the armies, the alliances, they circle Jerusalem the way moths circle a lamp. Maybe that is only history's habit. Or maybe something has been pointing at this place for a very long time, which brings us, at last, to the signal. Chapter 3.5, The Watchers. Chapter 3.5, The Watchers. Before we go into the windowless room, pause with me in the years between, because the strangest part of any signal is not the moment it is received. It is the waiting. Imagine all the people who saw something and then went back inside, carrying it quietly for the rest of their lives. A mechanic standing beside a rural highway, his hands still smelling of gasoline, watching a pale orange sphere move against the wind. A mother at a kitchen sink, looking out over the black glass of a backyard window, seeing a point of light stop where no star should stop. A radar operator in a dim room, watching a mark cross the screen too quickly, then vanish, then return behind him, as if the sky itself had folded. Most of them never became famous. Most never wrote books. Many told no one at all. Because there is a loneliness that comes after seeing the impossible. The world continues exactly as it was. Bills arrive, phones ring, coffee grows cold, the dog needs to be let out, and yet, somewhere inside you, a door has opened that will not close again. You know the sky is larger than it was yesterday, and you know that if you say so too loudly, people will smile politely and change the subject. So the witnesses learned to speak softly. They said, I don't know what it was. They said, I know what I saw. They said, I don't need anyone to believe me. But belief was never the important part. The important part was memory. Every report became a small stone laid beside another. One light over a farmhouse, one object above the sea, one pilot's voice, suddenly uncertain, one missile crew staring at status boards that should not have gone dark. Small stones placed across decades. And from above. If you could rise high enough, those stones would begin to look like a road. Not a straight road, not one any human planner would have drawn, but a road all the same, curving through fear, secrecy, disbelief, and time. A road leading toward a moment. Maybe that is why the encounters often felt so personal. Witnesses described being watched but not hunted, examined but not harmed, startled but not chosen at random. As if the light had arrived at exactly the right field, the right cockpit, the right lonely highway, not to convince the world all at once, but to leave one more human being unable to forget. And perhaps that was the design, not revelation, preparation. A message delivered too openly can be rejected in an instant. It becomes spectacle, panic, religion, weapon, hoax. But a message delivered slowly, through rumor, record, instrument, and dream, becomes something else. It becomes a pressure under history. It teaches the question before it gives the answer. For 60 years, the lights did not land on the White House lawn. They did not interrupt broadcasts. They did not carve words into mountains or burn symbols into the moon. They simply appeared, withdrew, appeared again. Enough to be recorded. Not enough to be owned. Enough to disturb certainty. Not enough to end the argument. And that may be the most intelligent signal of all, because humanity does not change when it is shouted at. Humanity changes when the same quiet question returns, again and again, until one day the mind is ready to hold it. What if we are not alone? What if they are not strangers? What if the future has been trying, very gently, not to frighten its own past? So before the analyst finds the rhythm, Before the servers unfold the message, remember the witnesses, the people who looked up, the people who carried a fragment, the people who became, without knowing it, the first receivers of a transmission too large for any one life. They were not the story's ending. They were the antenna. And now, at last, the signal can be heard. Chapter 4, The Signal. Chapter 4, The Signal. Imagine a room without windows, somewhere beneath a government building that appears on no tourist map. A room of soft blue screens and cooled air, where patient machines listen to the sky. For decades, agencies around the world have quietly collected the leftovers of every unexplained encounter. Radar tapes, cockpit film, radio frequency recordings, magnetometer readings from the nights when missiles went dark. Terabytes of strangeness, filed, classified, and mostly forgotten. Now imagine that some tired analyst on a night shift, with the building empty and the coffee gone cold, finally does what no one had thought to do. She stops studying the sightings one by one and lays them all side by side. Decades of them, hundreds of encounters, Phoenix and the Pacific, Montana and the North Sea, the readings arranged in a single timeline, like pages of a book finally placed in order. And there, running beneath the noise, beneath 60 years of static and glare, she finds it, a rhythm. 3 pulses, a pause, 3 pulses, a pause, the same interval, the same spacing, in recordings made 40 years apart, by instruments that had never met, on opposite sides of the planet. Not a language, nothing so crude as words, a pattern, mathematics, where mathematics should not be. The pulses fall in prime-numbered clusters, numbers with no natural cause, numbers that do not happen by accident. Their timing traces intervals too perfect for weather, too patient for machinery, and woven through them, faint as a heartbeat under floorboards, coordinates, angles of descent, places, and times. The analysts check it again, then bring in others who check it in silence and stay very late. Because here is what the rhythm means, if it means anything at all. The lights were never random. Every appearance, Phoenix, the Pacific, the missile fields, every silent hovering visit across 60 years was a beat in a single continuous transmission. One message delivered a few pulses at a time, generation after generation, with a patience that is difficult to think about for very long. What if the lights were never trying to be seen? What if, all along, they were trying to be understood? A civilization sends a signal like that for only one reason, not to say hello, to say something that matters, to someone who is not ready to hear it, slowly enough that one day they will be. In the windowless room, the great decoding begins. Months of work, compressed into humming server farms, the prime clusters aligned, the intervals mapped, the mathematics unfolded, layer by layer, like a paper flower opening in water, until one night, on the largest screen, the noise falls away, and the machine renders the message into 5 human words. Chapter 5, The Message. Chapter 5, The Message. The room is empty now, except for one person, standing very still, reading the screen. 5 words, 60 years in the sending. We are what? Oh, you become. Not, we come in peace. Not, we are watching. We are what you become. Sit with those words, in the dark, the way she did. 'Cause they change the question, don't they? All this time we asked, what are the lights? Visitors, we assumed, strangers, others crossing some unimaginable distance to look at us through the glass. But the message does not say we are travelers. It says, we are you. You, further down a road you have not walked yet. You, on the far side of choices you have not made yet. The lights over the missile silos, the silent shapes above the sea, not strangers at all, but something looking back at us, the way you might look at an old photograph of yourself, young and unaware, taken the summer before everything changed. And if that is true, even in a story, then every piece of our pattern turns over at once. Why do the lights gather around nuclear weapons? Why does the world's tension pool around one ancient city? Why the race for the moon, for Mars? Why the machines learning to think? Because those are the hinges, the places where the road forks. Whatever sent the signal, it knows which turns we take. It has seen where the road goes, and it went to extraordinary lengths across 60 years of patient, silent visits to leave a message for the people standing at the beginning of it. The question is no longer, are we alone? The question is, what do we become? And why, after all this time, did they need us to know? Chapter 6, The Choice. Chapter 6, The Choice. But a signal is only half of a conversation. The other half is the answer. And perhaps that is why the message is so unsettling. It does not tell humanity what to do. It does not threaten. It does not command. It simply holds up a mirror and lets us look. We are what you become. Those words do not sound like a warning at first. They sound almost gentle. But gentleness can carry weight. Imagine a child standing at the edge of a dark road and an older voice calling from far ahead, not shouting, not frightening, just saying, "Be careful here. I remember this turn. I remember what happened when I took it too quickly." Maybe that is what the lights have been doing all along, not saving us, not judging us, remembering us. Because if the signal truly comes from something we become, then the future is not a place waiting patiently at the end of time. It is alive. It is wounded by some choices, healed by others, and perhaps desperate enough to reach backward through the only door it has. A door made of mathematics, a door made of light, a door opened one silent sighting at a time. And this is where the story becomes very quiet. Because the future does not arrive all at once. It arrives in small permissions. A scientist decides whether a discovery should be shared or hidden. A commander decides whether a warning on a screen is an error or the beginning of a war. A programmer decides whether a machine should only answer questions or begin asking its own. A nation decides whether the moon is a destination or a fortress. A person decides whether fear will make them smaller or more awake. History turns on decisions so ordinary that no one hears them turning. A signature, a launch code not entered, a door left open, a call returned, a child taught to look up with wonder instead of dread. Maybe that is why the message did not come as a map. A map would make the road feel fixed. It would make us passengers. But the message came as a question. What do you become? And questions leave room for choice. In the windowless room, the analyst understands this slowly, not in one flash of terror, not like lightning, more like dawn coming under a door. If the message is real, then somewhere beyond us there is a version of humanity that survived long enough to send it. That alone is hope. But if there are two futures, as the second layer suggests, then survival is not the same as salvation. One future may be brilliant and cold, cities under glass, minds without sleep, bodies treated like old equipment, the stars reached but wonder lost, a human race that becomes powerful and forgets how to be human. Another future may be harder, slower, less perfect, a future that keeps the heart inside the machine, a future where intelligence grows, but compassion grows beside it, a future where the sky is not conquered, but joined. Two futures, both advanced, both waiting. Only one wants us to wake. That is the part the analyst cannot stop reading. Not survive, wake. Because waking is different. Waking means noticing the room you are in, noticing the fire before the house fills with smoke, noticing the hand on the switch before the missiles rise, noticing that power without wisdom is only another kind of sleep. Perhaps that is the return signal. Not proof of aliens, not proof of angels, not even proof of time travel. A return signal is something simpler and stranger. It is the moment a civilization hears itself from far away and realizes it still has time to become worthy of the voice that called. So the question remains above us tonight, quiet as a star. If the lights are waiting for an answer, what answer are we already giving them? Every warship in a narrow strait gives one answer. Every rocket climbing toward the moon gives one answer. Every machine learning our language gives one answer. Every frightened witness who tells the truth anyway gives one answer. And every sleeping city, every child, every field under fog before sunrise, waits beneath the same patient sky. The answer is not written yet. Maybe that is why the lights keep returning. Maybe they are not here to end the story. Maybe they are here because somehow the story still can change. Closing. The analyst logs the discovery at 3:47 in the morning, and for a long while does nothing at all, just stands there in the hum of the servers, looking at 5 words on a screen. Outside, the city sleeps, traffic lights change for empty streets, and overhead, the same stars that watched Babylon, and Rome, and Phoenix, Arizona, go on turning. Somewhere out there, over an ocean, or a missile field, or a foggy field in Alabama, a light is hovering, patient, silent, waiting for us to answer. This has been episode 1, The Signal. The story continues in episode 2, Not from Space. Sleep well. Post-credit whisper, deep in the recording, beneath the 5 words, the analysts found something else. A second layer, fainter, older, still being decoded, but the first fragment reads like this: there are 2 futures. Only one of them wants you to wake.